The trial of all crimes, except in cases of impeachment, shall be by jury, and such trial shall be held in the state where the said crime shall have been committed, but when not committed within any state, the trial shall be at such place or places as the Congress may by law have directed. At the time, this would have been, in the Northwest Territories, for example. So if in Ohio, for example, which was not yet a state, if you committed murder in Ohio, then the federal government got to decide where your trial was going to be. Technically, it would have been like counterfeiting or treason or something, a federal crime.
It's funny, when I was younger, you mentioned that. I had no idea. Why is this area called the Northwest Territory? We're in the middle of the country. Why?
Well, you're northwest of Virginia.
That was the border. Mississippi was the whole country back then.
Yeah. I've lived my whole life on the Pacific coast, so we're northwest now. Not that we're substantially north of you, but we're definitely west.
But we're the old Northwest.
We were Northwest before it was cool. Ohio, the hipster Northwest. Though we have more hipsters than you do, so there's that.
Cool. But not for impeachment. Not for impeachment.
Impeachment, they've already ruled out how it's going to happen. It's going to be in Congress. It's a whole different thing.
And you'll have a jury except for when you don't have a jury.
Right. You'll have a jury, except if it's impeachment, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
We've already laid all this out.
So I guess the Supreme Court, 9 people count as juries then?
Yes. There is one patch of land in the United States where it's basically impossible to be put on trial for any crimes because it's in Yellowstone Park, and I don't remember the exact details, but because of how the jurisdiction around, it's federal land, but it's this little tiny chunk of federal land, and there's no federal court that technically covers it.
Because it goes between 2 states, something like that.
Yeah.
2-state border.
So technically, you could commit crimes there and get away with them, but you're not going to because first you have to get there. And it's just too much work to go to commit a crime. But yeah, jury trial, relatively new in those days, like not brand new. The first jury trial in England was, it was 1220, so it's not like brand new. But it was in 1670, some people were found not, William Penn, actually, as in Pennsylvania, and William Meade, who was a merchant, were found not guilty of unlawful assembly, and then the judge imprisoned the jury without food, water, heat, or light, and said, I will have a positive verdict or you'll starve for it.
That sounds illegal now.
It's very illegal. So the history of jury trials in England is why the trial by jury is enshrined in the Constitution, because they didn't want to mess around with that kind of nonsense.
Yeah. So basically, in most court, the judge can say, don't do this, do that, but the jury is the final word of the court.
Yeah. And, I did jury duty a while ago and loved it. Honestly, I don't understand why people don't like jury duty. It was so much fun. Admittedly, our case was relatively minor and really clear cut. Neither side disputed the basic facts of the case. There were something like 4 witnesses total. We felt really sorry for the victim, who I think she testified for the prosecution but was a hostile witness or something along those lines. We felt sorry for her, but the fact remained, the guy was guilty. There was no debate about that. Our whole debate was that we had 2 prison abolitionists on the jury, and they didn't want to send the guy to jail because they didn't think it would help. And we were like, okay, we get that. However, that's not part of what we're deciding here. Also, seriously, look at this guy, look at his history. He needs to be away from this woman, and the only way we can get him away from this woman is sending him to jail. And they conceded that point.
So it was like an abusive.
Yeah, he was violating a restraining order that had been put in place by the county, and the amount of work you have to go through to get someone to put a restraining order on your partner against your will is a lot. And he'd been found guilty. He'd actually served prison time before for violating a restraining order. Counseling was going to do this guy no good. So we found him guilty because he was guilty.
So was it like a long debate? You same day thing?
We were in and out and out. I mean, the trial lasted several days, like 2 or 3 days. But deliberation, we were in and out in an afternoon. We had lunch. We spent another hour talking to the prison abolitionists. We delivered our verdict. We were free to go.
How was the what was it called, the when they pick you for jury?
That was fairly interesting. I'm pretty convinced that I only got on that jury because they'd run out of dismissals by the time they got to my number, because I had a really high number. And they only have so many dismissals without cause. I think the defense attorney didn't like me because I clearly was smarter than he wanted to deal with. Smart people actually have a really hard time getting on juries. And I clearly understood the system more than he was happy with. But they'd run out of peremptory dismissals by the time they got to me, so I was on the jury. There were several people who had medical reasons for not serving on a jury. There was one guy with kidney failure who needed to have a nap every afternoon. He didn't have to be on the jury. There was one guy who gave a fairly impassioned speech about how he would never be able to be unbiased in a case of domestic abuse, which I didn't disagree with anything that he said, but also I didn't disagree with kicking him off the jury. One woman, I looked up some of what she was saying when I got home, and it turns out her father, who's in prison, is probably a horrific racist. Some of the catchphrases she was using were kind of sovereign citizen, kind of this one specific militia that's really racist. So that was interesting. There were 2 people on our jury who had who worked for the school district. I think we had a web designer. We had 2 or 3 people along those lines. It was a fairly balanced pool as far as male-female, economics. There were a couple of people of color on our jury. And we had one alternate who spent the entire week sitting in a corner of the room reading Dune. So Our biggest concern as a jury was that our alternate got lunch.
So were you the jury foreman or?
No, we had one woman on the jury who said that it had been her lifelong goal to be the jury foreman, and so we let her do it.
Oh, that's how you pick it. You're it.
Yeah, you choose within your. You don't choose. They don't call it a foreman anymore. I forget what they do call it. But you choose. You're sitting in the jury room, ready to deliberate, and the first thing you do is you decide who's going to be in charge.
Who's gonna be who's the person that's gonna read the verdict?
Yeah. They read the verdict, and they're the one who kind of establishes how the agenda works.
Right.
They say, okay, well, let's talk about this part of things and go through this, and, we're going to go. We didn't spend a lot of time going over the evidence because it was really, really straightforward. The guy got arrested sitting on the woman's couch. So as I said, unless her couch was 200 feet away from her living room, then he was just plainly guilty.
Yeah, I don't know how it works in real life. All I know is from what I saw on TV, obviously. But it's and there that they hand the thing to the judge has it back, and the jury reads it.
Yeah. In ours, I think our foreman read it. They polled us, I know. They asked all of us individually if we had voted guilty. And we looked that man dead in the eye and told him that we'd found him guilty. There's apparently an old belief that the jury won't look a person in the eye if they found them guilty, but we did.
Did the judge have to do anything like call or like ban anybody or be really strict in that day?
No, it was fairly laid back. There was basically no audience in our courtroom. We got sent back to the jury room a few times because there were motions that they wanted to discuss outside our hearing, and I obviously don't know what happened in those. But then she met with us after we delivered our verdict and thanked us personally and answered any questions we had. And she was really nice. We really liked her. And three of us are like, I voted for you. She said, oh, thank you. So if I ever see her name come up on the ballot, I definitely vote for her now because she was really awesome. But it was, again, this was a very low level thing. I think it was technically a felony, but only because he was a repeat offender. And the whole process lasted about a week. And I think I ended up getting $80 or $90 out of it, which was more than I was expecting. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was not a ton, but it was more than I had been expecting. And since I'm on disability, $80 or $90 is a depressingly large percentage of my monthly income. And they paid mileage too to get to and from the courthouse. So
yeah, but I doubt it might be, but I doubt this court that case will be taken to the Supreme Court.
No. This guy is probably sitting in prison as we speak. Probably didn't bother with an appeal. I hope she referred to herself as fiance in the present tense. I hope they've broken up and she's moved on for the sake of her kids, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But
I can see. I
did get to see the workings. There is a patron exclusive article about it on my Patreon page because I thought it was interesting, so I wrote about it.
Cool, but I can see it. I can see it now. Take the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court declares the rights of the stalker.
Yeah, right.
But anyways, all right. State. So So in the state, unless they're between states.
Yeah. And again, the specific thinking here probably would have been the territories, the places that would go on to become states, because they weren't thinking of having permanent possessions the way we currently do.
Which I think we're going to bring up in Article 4 when we get to it.